Do you struggle with heartburn or indigestion or chronic gas and bloating? What about on and off diarrhea or constipation? If you could identify with none of those things I just mentioned, you are a fortunate person, because nowadays it is so prevalent for a society to have gut dysfunction. And I wanted to touch on, why do we have gut dysfunction? What are the reasons today? Why is it so prevalent? Why did we not deal with this 20 or 30 years ago? Well, one of the number one reasons is glyphosate and Roundup. And I know you're thinking, oh boy, here he goes. But listen, hear me out. Glyphosate was actually heavily used in the early 1990s. Before that point, they didn't use a whole lot of Roundup or glyphosate in any shape, herbicides in any shape or form in our modern agriculture, but also in the residential yard system. And what do I mean by that? Well, the agricultural system is not responsible for the majority of the misuse of Roundup or glyphosate. Yes, it is grown in our food and used in the soil, and they genetically modify foods to withstand the herbicide glyphosate. But Roundup actually has been misused by the average consumer around the house. When you think of the old Super Bowl commercials of the guy coming out of his garage with two plastic pistols of Roundup with a Roundup sprayer on his back, and he knocks down the 8 weeds that are in his driveway, because it's manly to not bend down and pick a weed. It's manly to shoot them with an herbicide so you can go back in and watch football. I digress, but my point is this, that leaches directly into our water systems, and they've found, if you look at the research, 75% of our waterways, 75% of our air has Roundup or glyphosate in it. And that's not because of the agricultural system per se, that's more because of the misuse of the average residential consumer of Roundup. So why do I bring that up? Well, Roundup actually, or glyphosate actually, what it does is it is patented as an antibiotic originally, not as an herbicide. So that means that if we ingest water or food that has been contaminated by glyphosate or Roundup, it's just like eating an antibiotic, which is my number 2 reason why we have such gut dysfunction and why it's so prevalent, is antibiotics. Antibiotics are heavily prescribed, the most prescribed drug in the US. If you go to the doctor with an earache, antibiotics. Sore throat, antibiotics. A cough and congestion, antibiotics. Well, a lot of these things are viruses, and an antibiotic does nothing to kill a virus. That's because a virus is not bacteria. An antibiotic is meant to kill bad bacteria. So what does it do? Well, when you take it when you don't need it and you're killing off bacteria in the gut, that allows bad bacteria and yeast to thrive. So it throws off our microbiome heavily, and then we develop dysfunction in the gut. The number 3 reason that I don't think a lot of people talk about is stress. And stress, we live in a fast-paced society, go, we eat on the run. Other countries do not move as fast as the US does. You go visit another country and the life is a lot simpler, it's a lot slower paced. They even take naps and siestas after lunch to digest their food. Not in the US. We have 40-hour work weeks, we have quotas, we have deadlines, we have emails to answer. And so we don't take time to digest our food, but also we have a high amount of stress, and that heavily raising the hormone cortisol in excess actually degrades the gut lining. And when we degrade the gut lining, then we run into leaky gut, and we run into leaky gut, we deal with more sensitivities to things like gluten and casein protein from dairy. So we have more sensitivities to dairy and gluten. Think about it. 25 years ago, did we hear anything about gluten sensitivity? Was there anyone complaining about not having gluten-free bread in a restaurant or something like that? This has just been in the last 25 years. Well, guess what happened 20 to 25 years ago? Glyphosate was entered into the modern agriculture system and the residential home, yard, gardening consumer. So you can see that this all ties back together. The number 4 reason that I don't think a lot of people talk about is parasites. For eons of time, cultures have been doing worm cleanses or deworming of not only their animals but also the human beings that are in their household. And we can pick up parasites from pets, we can pick up parasites from the dirt, we can pick up parasites from contaminated food. There is so many ways to pick up parasites, and if you don't do a yearly or at least a bi-yearly deworming, you can run into a whole lot of problems. It's estimated that up to 80% of people have parasites and don't know it. Think about that. Do some research on parasites. Do some research on what the symptoms of parasites are, and think about doing a deworming for you and your family and maybe your pets too. Massively huge importance when it comes to gut dysfunction. So if you're struggling with gut dysfunction and maybe you're wondering, man, I have been dealing with bloating and gas for a long time, and maybe I'm also struggling with my weight, maybe I'm not just feeling the best, I don't have the energy that I used to have, and I'm run down, and I have brain fog. And what do? Well, there's testing you can do to find out what is the source of your problem when it comes to gut dysfunction. There's the organic acid test. There's also a stool test. These things, you can get definitive answers on what you are dealing with. And once you know what you're dealing with, then you can put together a protocol that will address those issues. Things like candida yeast overgrowth and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or maybe giardia if you've ever been to Mexico or went camping and drank some questionable water. Once you know what you are dealing with, then you can design a protocol that will attack and address that thing. And lo and behold, you start pooping every day, or you start not having gas and bloating after every meal. Trust me, I've been there. I know having gas and bloating after a meal is not fun. It makes it to where you don't enjoy the food that you're eating. Not cool. Food is the gift of life. It's source of life. We should enjoy our food. I mean, that's a no-brainer. So if you're wondering about testing, please email me at musclesandveggies@gmail.com. Also, you can go on my website, musclesandveggies.com, look at testing, look at the prices of testing, ask me any questions. I will help in any way that I can. But I think the takeaway from this is there's a lot of things working against us when it comes to gut dysfunction in this modern world we live in. And there is steps and there is hope that you can reverse that and get back to feeling good and digesting your food well and not being swollen and bloated and gassy after meals. So I hope this helps somebody out there. That's my rant for the day. Zach with musclesandveggies.com.